Welcome to Female Voices, Life and Loss, a podcast dedicated to women from all walks of life. Whether you're navigating through loss, seeking growth, or simply looking for a place to feel understood, you've come to the right space. Each week, we provide compassionate guidance, share diverse stories, and offer practical advice to help you heal, grow, and thrive. No matter where you are on your journey, we're here to walk with you. Let's grow together. Welcome. Wayna, and I am here with Mimsy Hebron, and she wears so many hats. She is an author, she's a speaker, she's a poet, she's an artist, and an ordained minister. How do you do all these things?
That's a good question. um, I would say one at a time, but that isn't actually true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure. I just do it. I just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely do it. And when I'm tired, I put everything to rest. But I do it all. I wear the hats. I just take a hat off. Sometimes I have two
Mm-hmm.
hats on or three hats. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So, have you always done all these roles, or did you come to them kind of later in life?
I've always been multitasking, like the ordained minister. I got ordained in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
But
Nice.
I before then that was official. But before then I was, unofficial, but
Mm-hmm.
still in ministry. So I guess I've worn that quite a while. The artist and the
Mm-hmm.
poet and the writing,
Mm-hmm.
that has always been. That's always been. So
Nice.
um, since I was a little girl.
Ah, I'm so jealous. You're so gifted in so many areas. I got like two. That's it.
You probably have more than that. You just haven't tapped into them.
I'm teasing. So I came up to you at one of the galas, and I do know you and the group that you were with from Mount Gideon because
Mhm.
went there all of my life off and on because your
Yeah.
mom, my mom's a nomad, and I was on your grief support group that you did with with Pastor Houston, the
Mhm.
second, Drew. And so I thought, oh man, this might be a really good opportunity since we have this kind of grief in common.
Mhm.
Because I myself lost my 3-year-old son, so I started diving into that work as well. So just tell me a little bit about that journey and how that was. How you came to the grief work.
Um. So I got on a team that I never wanted to join,
Mm-hmm.
in a club that I never wanted to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my mom suddenly Valentine's Day,
Mm-hmm.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
And then 358 days later, I lost my dad on February 7th.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how, before then, I thought that I knew a lot about grief. I thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm a comforter, I'm compassionate with people, and I'm a listening ear for people, but I had no idea what grief and loss was really about until I lost my parents. It was traumatic. So,
Yeah, to say the
um,
least.
yeah.
I am with you with that. Like, I love this mental health field, so I thought I was competent and everything too. And my sister lost her husband about 9 years ago.
Mm,
And when I went through grief myself, with losing my own child, I was like, man, I didn't give my sister enough, credit. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? For how completely unbelievable that your life is like this, scary movie kind of thing. I didn't give her enough grace. I gave her some, but I,
mhm,
like most people, after a year I'm like, okay, we need to move a little bit, and
mhm.
after year one you might just start grieving. Maybe, you were in shock for a year. How was
Mhm.
it for you? Like, oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. I would say that I was in shock
Mm-hmm.
for probably 2 years.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
I didn't know what to do with what had occurred. There was definitely depression, a
Mm.
great deal of depression there. And so the first year was total shock.
Mhm.
The second year, kind of realizing, okay, they're gone. And when I was, after I lost my mom,
Mhm.
I had to go into caregiver mode for
Mhm.
my dad because he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh, wow. Man.
So I went into caregiver, and
Mhm.
I really didn't have time to grieve. So there
Right.
was grief, the loss of my mom,
Mhm.
and then there was a grief about my dad while he was still
Mhm.
living, that he has
Right.
this diagnosis and
Mhm.
there's this date, so to
Mhm.
speak, that he's no longer going to be here. He has this amount of much of time,
Mhm.
and so it was two sort of different griefs going on there. So I really didn't have the time to,
Mhm.
go and just totally shut down with my
Mm.
dad, still caring for him.
Mhm.
But after I lost him, then there was that shock. And
Mhm.
so that's why I said about 2 years.
Mhm.
I really was in shock.
Mhm.
And then I had to start dealing with it. I had to start dealing with it around the end of year 2.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of things, just mom passing away, dad getting diagnosed. So can't really grieve, got to pivot, jump into caregiver mode, and just grieving your father while he's still alive, which I think a lot of people can resonate with their parents getting older.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't there's some other losses in there. So you're grieving the loss of just your life, how it was prior to these two things happening.
Absolutely.
And I imagine that you still had to go to work, because
Well, with my dad, I took off,
okay.
and I tried initially, but I couldn't leave him knowing that I might be on my way to work. And then I
Mm-hmm.
go to, kiss him goodbye, give him a hug, and he's got a fever.
Mm-hmm.
So we're off to the emergency room. And
Mm-hmm.
so that wasn't working. It wasn't fair to my job. It wasn't fair to my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I just decided to leave work for a while to totally 100% take care of him. So that was even a loss of income,
Right.
loss of, like you said, the life that I had
Mm.
prior to that. I
Right.
had to become someone new. All of a sudden, I have a household, and it's like role reversal. Our
Mm-hmm.
parents take care of us when we're younger, and
Mm-hmm.
then you turn around and you're taking care of a parent. So,
Yeah, and they're not always good people to take care of all the time. I'm just figuring, we took care of my grandma. She get a little mouthy. She get, what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
truth is truth. My dad would say, I can laugh about it now.
Mhm.
I laughed about it then too, but he said, "You're not the boss. You're not a doctor. You're not the boss." And I'm like, "I'm the boss today, and I'm the doctor today, and this is what you're gonna do."
Right, right. It's different. That's all I like to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I'm the parent. You're
Yeah.
not. You're the child. You
Yes,
know.
I'm the parent, and he had early stages of dementia as well.
Mm,
So
mm.
that's a different ball game in of itself. There were some
Yes.
moments, very
Hmm.
funny moments.
Hmm.
Not there were some that were not so funny.
What were some of those not so funny? I got a couple that's funny. What were some that not so funny?
Not so funny. That Sundowners. I remember one time he was inpatient in the hospital, and he had to get his regular shot.
Mm-hmm.
This time in, he had this male nurse that was his buddy. My dad was always the cool guy at the hospital. He'd wear his
Hmm.
Marines hat, and everybody would say, "Thank you for your service," and he just ate that up.
I know that's right.
But this male nurse that he really bonded with, he really liked, and then just one night, uh, he was fighting and,
Mhm.
very, verbally sparring, and just didn't want to get a shot, and he was going to go home. He wasn't going to stand for it. And, it was in the middle of a snowstorm as well. And just, trying to convince him, like, no, you can't, raise the shades in the room. And I'm like, no, it's a blizzard outside. You can't go home. You can't drive. You can't go home. And
Mm.
he, was convinced that it was daytime, even
Mhm.
though he's looking out and it's nighttime.
Right.
So that was one moment that was just, that wasn't, not so fun. And another moment when he didn't know who I was.
Mm. Mm.
So
Yeah.
not so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you take care of yourself during those moments?
My faith,
Mm.
a big part of my life, leaning and trusting, God. I did a lot of crying.
Mhm.
So, he would say, I'm not going to bed now. I'm watching David Letterman. And I
Mhm.
was like, okay, after David Letterman, you go to bed.
Mhm.
And, I'd put him to bed, give him his medication. And then when he went to bed, it was time for me to do laundry,
Mhm.
the binders and keeping notes and all of those things. I was,
Mhm.
like a nurse as well. And then maybe around 1 o'clock in the morning, get
Mhm.
in the bed, and that's when I'd cry in my pillow. And I really didn't have any respite
Mm.
because he couldn't be left alone at all.
Mhm.
So no respite. And I just went into, I believe that God gives you this strength and this energy that comes out of nowhere. I was
Mhm.
able
He
to just do everything and not be tired.
right. Right.
It wasn't until he passed away that I was tired.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. Wow. You spoke about respite, and I know that we have, Department of Human Services and things like that that could come in and do respite. Were they just not available? Did you feel like those resources weren't available, or you didn't trust
I
anyone?
didn't trust.
Okay.
Didn't trust. That was, I was a daddy's girl. I'm like, this is my dad, and
Hmm.
I don't want anyone, abusing him, or he couldn't advocate for himself.
Mhm.
So I just said, this is what I'll do. I did have a family member, and a church member that came in later,
Mhm.
towards the end, but I was still very involved. I still didn't go back, to
Mhm.
work. I was still very involved, even though they were there,
Mhm.
and still kind of hands on because I'm that hands on person. But it was good to have someone else in the house that I could talk to,
Mhm.
laugh with. But I
Yeah.
didn't do no bubble baths or any of
Mhm.
the quote unquote normal things that I would have done before then.
Mhm. Did you feel like you were kind of in survival mode, kind of, I want to take care of my dad. I don't want to miss anything. I got to get this done, got that, just moving, boop, 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 boop.
Absolutely. Survival mode. I like the way you put that. It
Mhm.
was survival mode.
Mhm.
And I didn't have time for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when we think about it, we're talking about loss. It was the loss of me too.
Mhm.
So, that
Yeah.
was a lot.
Yeah. And if you're speaking to someone in that, kind of in that mode right now, they're taking care of their elderly parents, and they're like you, maybe they dead mama's boy, daddy girl,
Hmm.
they can't nobody treat, take care of like I could take care of them.
Hmm.
Would you offer some different, advice, after you experience that, about self-care and, things like that?
It's an individual, decision to make.
Mhm.
But in hindsight is always 2020.
Mhm.
I would say even if it was for an hour
Mhm.
a day, to allow someone else to come in and be able to take that bubble bath, to be able to take a walk,
Mhm.
put your headphones on, listen to some music,
Mhm.
go into your prayer room, or, whatever you need to do. I would suggest that because you do lose yourself in that role. And it's very difficult when you come out of that after that person has passed on. And I believe that everything now, every moment that I would have with him, there wasn't anything that I was really gonna miss because I had a lifetime as
Hmm.
of moments.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that in hindsight, 2020, you do have to prioritize some care for yourself. Because,
Mhm.
like you said, when they pass, since we're believers, we know we're going to see them again. But when they pass, where did you lose identity? You know? Because I felt like I did. You know what I'm saying? I got a 21-year-old, and I would have a 3-year-old, and
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying. And now the 3-year-old's gone, 21-year-old's living his life. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of like, okay, what do I do? Kind of my whole motivation.
Mhm. Mhm. You do lose that identity because, if anyone had asked tell me about yourself.
Hmm.
Well, I'm caring for my dad. That's the first thing that
Hmm.
came out of my mouth. I'm caring for my dad, listing his illnesses and
Hmm.
things that are going on versus talking about Mimsy.
Hmm.
So I became caregiver,
Hmm.
and that was my title, that was my role, that was my life. So there was no writing, no
Hmm.
poetry, no creativity, no time for myself.
Hmm.
I just didn't take that time, and I wish I had.
Hmm.
Hindsight, I think it would have been easier for me, perhaps,
Hmm.
after he passed away.
Yeah, yeah, to have some of that outlet,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
then he passed, you kind of reinducing yourself back to who you were.
Hmm. And I
Um,
had great friends that would come, that would call and
mhm,
text, and that's always very helpful. And I tell people who are on the other side,
mhm,
go ahead and send a text.
right,
If you don't think you want to call, try and call. But if they're not picking up because they're busy or what have you, send that text. Send an emoji, a heart emoji, a prayer hand emoji, something, just letting them know that
right,
they're being thought of.
right. I love that. And I know when my son first passed, people, after about a month and couple of months, life goes, back to normal, so they're not checking in as much. They're not, like, they're like, well, we saw you, you weren't in tears, so we thought you were good, so they don't,
Hmm.
they don't bring up the names, and then you're like,
Hmm.
no, I want to talk about them. I want to share memories. I want, because I had, this person that I love so much, these people, in your case, my parents,
Hmm.
that I was super, that I loved, I was close to. Please share with me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and people, I had to learn too that people, we can't put such a burden on them. They can't
Mhm.
be our everything all the
Yes,
time.
that is true.
Also, people, unless you've sort of been through that walk and that
Mhm.
journey, you don't know what to say. People don't know what to say to you. They don't know if they should bring it up or
Mhm.
shouldn't. They're uncomfortable. They don't want to make you uncomfortable, make you cry. So I think it's great having platforms like you have here
Mhm.
and writing in the book and speaking
Mhm.
on it, every opportunity to share with people and
Mhm.
let them know these are some of the things that you should say, and these are some of the things that you shouldn't do or shouldn't say.
Yeah, I saw something on, what is it, Grief Share, and they had this list of all the things like you should not do. you know,
Hmm.
and then a
Hmm.
list of kind of these are helpful things to do.
Hmm.
So I find that I shared that on Facebook, and I got so much feedback just saying thank you. This really helps, because we don't know what we don't know.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and then right before we get to this book, I wanna bring the mood up a little bit, and just talk about some of those funny times with dementia, because I have a couple myself. So what were some of those kind of funny times in dealing with, and taking care of your father, and that memory kind of coming and going?
Oh my goodness. One time I was visiting him in the hospital, and he had mail that had come to the house, and I still wanted him to have his dignity and his autonomy. So instead of me opening up the mail, I'd bring it to him to the
Mhm.
hospital. I was a permanent fixture at the
Mhm.
hospital. They were like, wow, the nurses and doctors are like, you're really here. I'm like, of
Mhm.
course, that's my dad, and that's
Right. I
job
need to
to do.
check on y'all. Mhm.
And I brought some mail one day, and he was opening it, and he just started cracking up laughing, and he's
Mhm.
like slapping his knee and just really. And I was like, "What's so funny, Daddy? What's so funny?" And
Mhm.
he's like, "You ought to see this. I mean, you really ought to see this.
Mhm.
Isn't this something?" And I'm like, thinking, okay, what was in one of those letters? What could be so funny? And he said, "Take a look at this. Just take a look at this." And what it was some test results from the doctor.
Mhm.
And I'm scratching my head, going, what's funny about this? He said, "You didn't see that? Don't you see that?" And I was like, "No." I said, "You tell me." I said, "What's so funny?" And
Right.
so we had a dog named Mike that had passed away so many years ago.
Mhm.
And he said, "Well, isn't that funny that Mike and I go to the same doctor?" And I'm like, and I just had to that in itself was funny. So I started laughing and I played along with it. And he laughed for like 30 minutes. It was just so funny to him. And then him saying that was funny to me. And I looked at the letter. And, I don't remember or recall if there was someone named Mike or
Mhm.
Michael in the letter, but
Uh-huh.
somehow a dog that had passed a long time ago, he and the dog were going to the same doctor.
Like, okay.
I was like, okay, that
Gosh.
was hilarious. I
That
would
is so
never forget that.
funny. So
Mm-hmm.
my grandma was like a shoe from the hip kind of, grandma. So she would ask me the same question every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there and it's Easter and she doesn't remember my son is like 10. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't remember that he's that big. She
Yeah.
only remembers him as a baby.
Uh-huh.
So she says, Wayna, where your husband at? And I said, we got a divorce. So she said, "Oh, so you got rid of him?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, good for you." And then she said, "Who is this?" Right? Because she's looking at my son. And I was like, "That's Gabe." She said, "Gabe this big?" And I'm like, "Yeah." It did. So we do every 10 minutes. It was the same two questions. And I
Mm-hmm.
would just make up different answers every time. And
Yeah.
she's like, "Where your husband?" I'm like, "I got rid of him, kicked him to the curb." She's like, "Yeah, because they ain't no good."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
she goes, "Who is this?" And I'd be like, "This is a foster kid that."
That's funny. That's so funny.
So,
And those moments are they're precious. Those are the things that you hang on to.
yeah, she was a mess. She said, "Y'all, if y'all put me in a home, put me in a room with a man." And I said, "You is fast, ma'am."
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's the kind of humor she has.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, grandma, all right.
I remember another one at home that I was, working at the time, and
Mm-hmm,
came to the house and went to the fridge, and the canister of sugar was in
mm-hmm,
the refrigerator. I'm
mm-hmm,
like, "Dad," I was like, "Did you put this sugar in the refrigerator?"
mm-hmm.
Like, "What?" And he came up and he opens the door of the refrigerator, and he's got a hoodie on, and he's got his bathrobe on top of that, and he's all bundled up, and his cowboy boots, his favorite cowboy boots. And
Oh, God.
he said, "What sugar?" And I pointed to him. I said, "That." He said, "I did." He turned around to me, and I have this on video. He turned around and he said, "I didn't do that." And I said, "Well, who could have done it?" I said, "There's no one in the house except me and you." He said, "Sophie probably did that." And that's my dog. So he was like, "Sophie probably did that." And it was just hilarious because he was
Like, okay.
that he didn't do that.
You're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Such rich memories.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought up your book, and so
Yeah.
I got a couple. So your book, so you're single, get over it.
Uh-huh. Yes. Oh my gosh. A blast from the
What inspired you to write this, and what's the biggest takeaway you want for readers on this?
I would say my mom, because she didn't force me to write the book, but she was the reason I wrote the book. Um, she was that mom that if you're in the grocery store and you're with her, she's like, "Oh, my daughter's over here in aisle whatever. Maybe you can give her your number and things like that." So just pushing. Because I was married at 23 and divorced at 25, but her
Mhm.
request was, you gotta get married again, and
Yeah, get
when
back
will
on
you
there.
get married, and when, and so those thoughts helped me to come to think about singleness and what that was like for me.
Mm.
And I guess one of the takeaways from the book is how many different types of guys there are.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I can.
There's an array of them, and there's types, and they fit into different categories. But I wanted to make sure I let people know
Mhm.
that I wasn't anti-marriage or anti-relationship. It's
Yeah.
just I wanted to share some of those things
Mhm.
from dating and what that was like.
Yeah, I am with you. I was single for about 10 years.
Hmm.
The Lord had to soften my heart. That is the only reason I got married again. The Lord worked on me for 3 years daily. So I get it. I tell people, I'm like, hey, if you're doing online dating, I can support you through that because it is garbage. And that's how I met my husband. So I
Right.
understand the ups and the downs because it is, you
I hear scary horror stories.
I put a lot of things in place, and most of the guys didn't want to talk to me. They like, she is high maintenance, she wants your life together, she wants all these things.
Hmm.
They were like, ugh, she too much,
Hmm.
pretty much could weed out.
I get that. I get that. And making them on point. Like, no, you got to
Mhm.
be on point. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so much that one of my friends, when I announced, I was engaged, she said, "Brother, I know you did some work because she ain't that one don't play." So she's like, "So I already know you a good brother because she."
Right.
So yeah, that is. I love the title though, so I can kind of see. I can see
Yes.
myself saying something like that.
Yeah. You're single. Get over it. It's not a death sentence. There's nothing wrong with you. People ask, well, why are you still, there must be something wrong. How about let's turn that around and say there must be something right with you that
Right.
you don't just accept less than what you are deserving of.
That is the standard right there, ma'am. Hitting
Hmm.
that on the nose. I ain't gonna lie though, I did fall victim to that for a half of a second.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've
We all have.
uh this podcast, Revive Our Hearts. Have you ever heard that? It's a podcast for women. So it's just a spiritual inspirational,
Hmm.
godly women. And so the woman on there, Nancy DeMoss, I think she was like 55. Never ever been on a date ever. Like had zero interest in that. She just felt that was not her walk, right? And then so all these years of her ministry, and then all of a sudden I think she's 50 at this time. They're like, yeah, she's getting engaged. Everybody's like, what? Like, what? Who?
Wow.
Craziest thing. I think they wrote letters to each other first. It was a very beautiful story though.
Hmm.
The guy that that they were was pursuing her, his wife died of cancer.
Hmm.
Wife had told her friends beforehand, what if Robert marries Nancy? Like that would work. I think they would be a good perfect match. And that's kind of how it started. Ain't that crazy?
I don't know. I've only seen that in the movies. I've seen the
Well,
wife that has a terminal illness and
yeah.
go on and
Mhm.
in fact, how about this person? Wow, that's interesting.
But I was a little envious. I said, "Dang, Nancy the most." That's not what I
Wow.
Not saying she didn't wasn't deserving or anything like
Mhm.
that. Just like she wasn't even looking for one.
Exactly, and that's when it happens.
Happens, yep, that is how it happens.
It happens is when you're not looking,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
like
exactly.
there I saw a meme.
Mhm.
Maybe it was last week, and it was a picture, I think, of a woman who looked like she was about 85 and a man who looked about 90, and she
Mhm.
had her wedding dress on, and
Oh, I love
they had written was, um, everybody else is getting married. This is my life. This is what I'm gonna be looking like.
it. All right. Say living your life to the fullest, though, ain't that the truth?
Hmm.
Because if nothing that grief teaches us, this time is short, you know.
It definitely is. It definitely is. And nothing is promised to you, not today,
Mhm. You
not
yeah.
tomorrow. It's not promised.
And I think that's a little hard for some of us who are in the church to wrap our mind around. You know, hey God, I serve you, I worship you, I go to church, I check off all the boxes, and you still allow this to happen to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah.
And being in ministry, oh my goodness, it's like, oh, you're strong. You pray for people, you preach, you do this, so you can handle that. And no, I'm a human just like the next person. Um, you had that pressure on you
See
to
that.
be perfect and to be able to carry this weight on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you have feelings, you have a heart, just like the next person. So
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. I think when my son passed, I did have that thought. I was just like, I control nothing. That was my thought. That was my reality. I control nothing.
mm-hmm,
We're in a fallen world. Accidents happen. How I wish it would not happen the way it did. I,
mm-hmm,
I was fully convinced that God was going to show up and he was going to walk me through this.
mm-hmm,
I just had that conviction.
mm-hmm,
I had spoken my son's funeral and everybody's like,
mm-hmm.
how did you do that? And then my husband never seen me at work. So he had no clue, how I work, because he was trying to give me talking tips before, the day before. And I was like, I want Toastmasters, right? Like, I'm good, like,
Right, right. Toastmasters, yay, Toastmasters.
yeah, no, but yeah, but everybody's just like, how did he said, I didn't know you could command a room like that.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
then everybody said, well, we didn't know you were this funny, because I got a lot of
mm-hmm,
sarcasm. But yeah, it was true. We control nothing. So I got that you contributed to Voices of Hope and Voices of Inspiration.
mm-hmm.
Can you share a powerful lesson, from moment from that collaboration?
Um, let's see. Maybe there's something that I want to read. Can I read
Okay, sure. Bless us
it?
with them.
Let's see. Here I am without reader glasses. You get to be a certain age and you need reader glasses.
Judgment free zone here, man.
Um, let's see. I wrote, the second lesson that I learned is that grief doesn't just happen to us, it transforms us. Although I was an adult with a comfortable career, a nice vehicle, and paid bills like every other American, I
Mm-hmm.
was not adulting. I was an adult child who
Mm-hmm.
had become dependent on my parents to always be available for me when life got tough. When I experienced an emergency or life crisis, my parents became the fixers. They were always there until they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Grief transforms you.
Yeah.
It
Now,
just doesn't happen.
when you say you weren't adulting, speak to that because we got a lot of parents who struggle with some of their adult children as well. So speak to that part of just not adulting and.
In plain language, I was spoiled. I
Okay.
was spoiled, and not in a nasty sort of way, but just spoiled to, and I, instead of depending on God for everything, like I'll
Mm.
depend on God for these things, then I
Mhm.
can depend on my parents for these things. Even
Mhm.
though I was an adult, working, paying bills, doing those things, but when, like I shared, when things got in a pinch, being a daddy's girl, I could say, "Hey, Dad." hey dad, can I, or dad, can you help me with this, or daddy, this happened, or, and
Mhm.
so always having that ear and taking for granted, I just never ever thought about my parents passing away. I,
Mhm.
that people get older and they will
Mhm.
pass away, but I just never had that thought in the back of my mind. They would always be there.
Mhm.
And a lesson that God, everything works out for our good. And I
Mm.
had to grow up,
Yeah.
even though I was a, you know, tried and true adult. I had to grow up, and I wouldn't choose this way. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I'd learn some other kind of way. Like, God, okay, give me a different lesson. Let me
Right.
figure this out.
Right.
But it helped me tremendously to do the growing up that I needed to do, and to also be able to turn back to God
Mhm.
for everything,
Mhm.
how minor, no matter how major.
Mhm.
God is the one that's going to always be there, because people will pass away,
Mhm.
friendships end, relationships end. So that was a lesson, and it turned out for good, because going through what I went through, I'm
Mhm.
able to help the next person
Mhm.
through that, or going to go through that.
Definitely love to pay it forward with all of the things you said. Speak to the transformation that took place for you.
When I say I was a child, not in stature, even though I'm short and kids are taller than me.
Yeah, part of the 5 footers.
So, but the transformation of knowing that, first of all, in caring for my dad, taking care of, things with my brother for funeral arrangements and things like that. These are, you have to put your big girl pants on, and you have to
Mhm.
do these things.
Mhm.
And it transformed me into a stronger person, a
Mhm.
more confident person in
Mhm.
my abilities of what I'm capable of doing.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, grief does, it does a number on us. And I can't say that I am done, with that transformation, but
Mhm,
definitely felt like you felt I wanted everyone's eyes to be on the Lord. I
mhm,
did not want anybody like, oh, this poor mom, oh, this poor baby that died, oh, this poor
mhm,
dad. I really wanted them to see the Lord show up.
mhm,
And show and work through my life. I wanted that funeral to be all about glorifying God and
mhm,
just getting back to Him. And like you said, I need to put my faith in Him. And for me, that probably maybe, and your mind tries to make up all these different things about why, that this happened the way it did. What lesson do I need to learn?
mhm.
And I struggle with that myself. Just like, man, was I putting all my faith in myself, in my own abilities and not his? Just like, man.
And here you are today,
Mhm.
from that painful experience. Here you are today helping so many other people, that I think the compassion and the capacity is
Mhm.
probably greater, having gone through that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Um, and that's a another transformation that you go
Mhm.
through, because you can be more compassionate
Mhm.
to people who are going through something similar, and you're spreading the word and spreading the message. And it's not about beating people over the head with the Bible and quoting scriptures,
Mhm.
but sharing your testimony and your life story can bring others to God.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well put. Yeah, that's just, man. The transfer, I keep thinking about the transformation. There's so many layers to it, especially in my situation because my husband, he was negligent, so that is why our son died. So, you can imagine what a marriage goes through, what a men how they grieve differently and so we're just trying to give space to all those difficult things that come up during this grief process and just like you said, I just wanted to be used for somebody else.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
then I had the thought, how you go with this guy, why me, why me, And then I was like, but Wayna, would you want another mom to deal with this? And I would take it. You know what I'm saying? I'll take it. If that means the next person can be a little bit less, I'll take it. I'll carry it.
And God gives only to those that He knows are strong enough to handle it.
Hmm. Yeah, but you be like, are you
If
sure about that strength, Lord?
right, can you skip me and go to somebody else? Or like, is there another way we could do this and work this
Hey,
out?
I gotta figure it out, and I gotta still live. I gotta go to work because I had to go back to work because I was an HR manager, and my team had been covering for me for a month.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I had cross trained everybody because I was like, we never know when something
Mm-hmm.
happens. We all need to know what the right hand and the left hand doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, thankfully, and my mom was working up for me as well, and all my cousins. It was really funny. My mom, my stepmom, and my cousin, and a church member, and they showed up and showed out. So the
Mm-hmm.
Lord, the Lord definitely does provide. It does not feel comfortable all the time going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh man. So there's a couple of other areas that we didn't touch on. And so I want to talk a little bit about, your creativity with your productions, being on stage and things like that. And your advocacy and leadership, working with the urban lead and education. Tell us more about what makes up this whole complete package of Mimsy.
Wow, that's a good question, Wayna. Good question. Um, I've always had a heart, which I speak to in the third book, Voices of Inspiration.
Hmm.
And I speak to my love for children.
Hmm.
I've always have, don't have any children of my own. And so um, I've always just wanted to be an advocate for them, to just see these tiny little humans just grow up to be, they have the opportunities to be these great adults and to add to our communities and to the social.
Hmm.
And so I've always found myself, somewhere in education or around, even when I was in corporate America, I would, kind of the people who had kids, or, if there was summer camp or the vacation Bible school at church and things like that, always found myself in that arena. And the acting, I was an only child for 9 years. So I acted a lot. I had the imaginary friends. Um, it didn't matter if someone down the block, couldn't come over to play because
Hmm.
I had my imaginary friends. So I was always able to do that. That's just a gift that God gave me. The art and the writing, again, something I've been doing since I was a little girl, and I can't go away from it. Tried to go away from it and said, well, I'm just going to do something different. And I
Hmm.
always come back to those things. And
Hmm.
that's kind of me.
Okay, okay. And no children of your own.
No, no, I
With
had a loss.
this? Okay, okay.
Yeah, had a loss. So no children of my own.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think back and I was like, well, God, had I had children,
Hmm.
would I have been able to do all of the things that I'm doing? Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not a lot of them.
Hmm.
So there's just, your family comes first and,
Hmm.
caring for children and all of that. So I guess it just wasn't in the cards for me
Gotcha.
to be a mom, but I am a mom. I will never forget someone telling me, they're like, you didn't birth a child, but
Hmm.
you're a mom.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you're in education, I'm sure you somebody play mama, play auntie,
Yeah.
whoever, TT, some,
Yes.
and I think a lot of women don't give themselves enough credit
Mm-hmm.
if they didn't physically birth a child, but that impact on children is huge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they benefit from any positive interaction. I don't care who it is,
Yeah. Yes.
Need everybody loving on these babies right
Exactly. And
now.
that's what I do every single 5 days a week, Monday through
Mm,
Friday, and
mm,
well, 6 days a week because at church too. And I just have, the love for them. I'm just amazed that, again, a child comes in there 2 or 3 and they don't know how to tie their shoes. By the time they leave your school, they know how to tie their shoes, or they
mhm,
mastered something, or reading, or it's a wonderful thing to see. And I say, well, people who make widgets and
mhm.
carports, though, that's important, but
Right.
we help to create human beings,
Mm-hmm.
these little people who are going to grow up to be these awesome adults.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I worked in elementary a year ago. It's right after my son passed away. I went to be a school counselor for the littles.
Mm-hmm.
And man, some of the parents, I just wanted to shake them. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I wish somebody would have called me that morning. My son went at school. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? Like, I didn't get that call.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling you and saying your kid is not here, and they feel like we're bill collectors. And it's like, no, we actually do care about your child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And um, when they walk in the door, it's care and concern about them
Mhm.
the entire time that they're here. And
Mhm.
when they leave, you're still thinking about, do they have enough to eat? Are they
Mhm.
safe? Are they
That
warm? Are they
breaks
comfortable?
your heart.
You know, yeah. So I have all of that to give, and give that every day.
Well, I just want to say, on behalf of those mothers who had a very, very small village, I wish I'd had more support, but I didn't. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I just, on behalf of those moms that, are sending their child to these places, school, to church, and you all are just loving on them, teaching them the right thing to do, listening to them when things are, conflicts or they're sad
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. That
Mm-hmm.
is just so golden to know that you can send your child with this person. They are safe, they are well cared for,
Mm-hmm.
and I can relax. You know what I'm saying.
Sure, sure, and that's at top of mind as well. Because if
Mhm.
I had a child, I would want where my child went to school to be that safe place for
Mhm.
them to really care about my child. And we actually at Head Start, it's not only the child, but it's the family. So
Yes,
to
yes.
build the families, which helps to build the community. And it's just, it's a big village and a big circle.
So true, so true. Man, I will talk about that more, but I'm like, let it go. So tell me, what's your memorable piece with this creativity and the poetry and the singing? What's your favorite?
Ooh. Ah, what's my favorite? Wayna, now that's a hard question. I would have to say the writing.
Mm-hmm.
The writing, because once it is written, it's there forever.
Mm,
And it touches so many people,
mm-hmm.
whether it's in your digital form, you're reading it on your Kindle online, or you're in the library,
Mm-hmm.
or you have the book at home and you're thumbing through and you're putting your little bookmark in. It's there, and it touches the lives of so many people. So I think
Mm-hmm.
I would say writing is the favorite, and it also helps to it's calming,
Mm-hmm.
and it's therapeutic as
Yeah.
well, because it was therapeutic for me to write about my parents in the
Mm-hmm.
chapter A Perfect Day.
Mm.
Therapeutic to write in Voices of Inspiration about being, the mama of the village. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Writing. It's hard for me to, my mind is like a squirrel. So I could start what chapter about mama and end up talking about high school. Like what are we talking about here? It's like you're all over the place. You like, yeah.
called short stories, a collection of short stories.
You give it a name.
Yes,
Get that
collection of
I'm
short.
really doing something besides just scribbling, you know?
Yes, yes. So chapter one is about high school. Chapter two is about jewelry. Chapter three,
Mhm.
and it's a collection of short stories. And you will always, there's always going to be someone that will read the book.
Mm, I hope so. We're gonna see. We're gonna see. I'm not there yet though, clearly.
Okay.
Because anytime I talk
Call
about,
me when you are.
yeah, I'll be like, can you write this for me? And I'm gonna just tell you about it, and you write it in your words and make it sound good. Because you're a writer. I'm a talker. I'm a chatty Cathy. I'm one of them kids always got in trouble at school. Always.
Me too. Me too. Yep. Mom was like, come up, and she's like, if you told me, she beat up somebody or something like that, I'm not going to believe you. But if you said she was talking, yes, that's my daughter. That's me.
Guilty as charged. So we did talk a little bit about, your ministry and how you got started. Has your ministry has it helped in these creative outlets with the writing and things like that? Just.
I would say yes, because when you're delivering the word of God, and you're preaching to one person or a crowd of 100 or 200 people, you have to write and create your sermon, and you take it from the Bible, and then you put it together, and you want to deliver something that people are going to grow from,
Mm-hmm.
and that they can hold on to, that'll carry them through. So yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I call it an honor. It's just to be able to sit with people like you, and I call it talking trash because I just like to ask 1,000 questions. See what happens. But I do just enjoy meeting people of God, learning about what they do,
Mm-hmm.
learning about how he has been moving in their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's very impactful for me, especially when I share with, other women, when I'm talking to the students on campus and things like that, when they have tough things come up, it's like, hey, I heard a story, heard a thing, met a woman, who been through this,
Mm-hmm.
so if you need some support, they can support you,
Mm-hmm.
but it can, transformation, healing.
Yeah.
um I'm not going to say get over grief because I don't think we do.
No,
We grow with it.
that's true.
And when we can think about them, and just the smile comes and the tears are less.
Mm-hmm.
We know we got movement. We're like,
Yes. And it there's a phrase that says it gets better, but
mm,
that's very touchy for people. So
mhm,
like you said, you grow with it, and God
mhm,
has a way of lessening the
mhm. Won't he do it though?
pain and moving more of the joy
Mhm,
inside of you, and having peace with it. And one of the things that I discovered going through grief and loss is we have to learn how to let it go,
mhm.
because we'll hold it like a
Yeah.
baby, because it's comfortable,
Mhm,
and it's scary to go outside. What is outside of not having this heavy thing around my neck? I'm
mhm,
afraid to go out
mhm,
on that. And also thinking, if I'm no longer crying for 2 hours a day, or sniffing their clothing, or
mhm.
things like that, then that means I'm going to forget about them. There's a fear of forgetting about them.
And you feel guilty, you
Mm-hmm.
feel guilty. I remember the first time that I laughed, since
Mm-hmm.
my son had passed.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my cousin had tickets to the botanical garden, the light thing. I forget,
Mm-hmm.
glow.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked through that long little tunnel with the lights, and
Yes.
we call ourselves gonna do the walk through video, when I walked through the little TikTok thing. So we did that, and it was a lot of fun, and we just died laughing. I probably died laughing for 5-10 minutes,
Uh-huh.
and then it took me another 5-10 minutes, and I was like, oh my god, like I wasn't crying, I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
thinking about my son. And then I felt
Mm-hmm.
like a horrible person all over. you know?
Right. Right.
You
Right?
know, it's kind of like peeling an onion. You know, 4 steps forward, 3 back. Dang it! Now I gotta. Okay, I'm gonna try it one more time.
Yes.
Um. So yeah, it comes and goes. It ebbs and flows.
Love. Mhm.
So we're coming up on our time,
Okay.
and we had so much fun. Talking
This
about all
was
of this.
fun, Wayna.
Yes. Do you want to leave anything with our listeners? What do you want, what do you want to leave with them?
I would say um, to hold on and that life is worth living.
Mm.
Life is worth living.
Mm.
Even when you want to let that life go, as I wanted to,
I'm
um,
with you. Yeah.
you know, life is worth living and there will be a tomorrow.
Hmm.
There will be a tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just like Mimsy said, it will be a tomorrow. If
Mm-hmm.
you can hold on for just 20 minutes, that's what the
Yeah.
statistics say.
Yes.
You can hold on for 20 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
then that thought, will lessen in
Yeah.
the impact.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
being with
you.
us. Female Voices, Life and Loss. So we still got life to live, even though we had some losses.
Yes.
Join us next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Female Voices Life and Loss. We hope today's conversation brought you comfort, insight, and a sense of community. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with others who might need it. Stay connected, stay resilient, and until next time, keep growing and healing.